All right, hello and welcome to Awkward Family Conversations, where we try to help millennials and Zoomers figure out how to live. I am here with my dad, who for many years now has been locked in a fierce, ongoing debate for who in the family is the big sill, which means the big silly, the silliest of all. And we all maintain that it is my father, the big sill, but he thinks it's his dad. And then you got a t-shirt that said, I'm the big sill.
I did. That's true. Yep. That is fair.
Yep.
But I still think it all starts at the top, which is at the patriarch, who is my father. So
he could be the grand sill.
He could be. But yeah, I think he's truly the big sill. I think it's just I think I got his shirt by mistake. So hello, Addie. How are you doing?
Hi, Dad.
So yes, I am here with my daughter, Addie. Do you know where we were 9 years ago today, Addie?
9 years ago today. What year is it? 2022. You said 2013. So it would have been right after my freshman year of high school, or like March of my freshman year.
Well, it's April of your freshman year of high school, so you still would have been in high school.
I thought it was August for some reason. Okay, so I'm still in high school. It's April or my freshman year. We weren't in Portland. That was my 8th grade year.
No. We were actually at Marianne's Ice Cream in Santa Cruz, probably 7 years ago or 9 years ago, probably this very time, actually.
This is around when we make it there.
Yes, it would have been probably Easter break from your school. You would have had a day, and you and I were, I don't know why Kelly and your mother weren't with us, but it was the two of us down in Santa Cruz. You had your short haircut back then.
That was when they were doing the whirlwind college tours, because Callie hadn't decided yet. So
that's
they went
right.
to
So
all the places that she got into that she was thinking about. I think they did that over spring break.
It would have been spring
break. The way we did.
Right. They were in Boston and Vermont and
stuff. So it was just you and me home for a week.
It was just you and me that week, and we took a day and hit Santa Cruz, which I don't know if it's still your favorite place, but we've talked about it before.
It's high up there.
Yeah,
it's definitely, if Eric's able to come home with me in June, that would be really fun to pull that off.
Yes, well, we'll make it a point to get down there. It is a great place to visit, no question about it. So, very good. Well, what are we talking about today, Ed? We've had a couple of weeks sabbatical. What are we? We're back on it today. Season 4, episode 6.
Woo! We had our involuntary mid-season break, so we'll wrap up the latter half now. Today is, what's the big deal about changing your job or career?
Yeah,
this is the big deal, Dad.
What's that?
I said, what is the big deal, Dad?
Well, it's a big deal. Well, let's just say it's a regular deal. Most people change, at least certainly their jobs, several times during their life, and most of us also change our careers. Take it in a whole different direction. As you can probably attest, you're 23 years old, and you had.
We were talking about this today, actually. I got a tattoo today, and my friend at the tattoo shop has worked in daycare, worked in teaching coding to children, worked at Starbucks as a manager, went to become a vet tech, which is how we met. Mm-hmm. And then after vet teching, went back to being a barista, and now is a tattoo artist. Yeah. So I've had a similarly weird one that's slightly shorter, but like food service to retail to recording studios to gear studios to vet industry, and now back to the music industry.
Yeah, but in different roles, right? Your music industry piece now is more about data management.
Yeah, it's tangentially music related, but you could sub out anything and it'd be the same job.
Well, yeah, I mean, you're doing it, but for music industry, and that's that actually is a very common. Well, one, it's common when you start your career, as you're looking for a place to find where your niche is, and for you, you trained in audio engineering but chose not to go into that work, and so that does put you at a bit of a disadvantage. I mean, I think a lot of people move into the career that they've trained for, you've got cousins who are accountants and consultants and salespeople and nurses, and yeah, I mean these are they went through education programs in college to learn those skills. But that's not to say that they also during the course of their career won't shift gears and redirect their efforts. Some of it will be voluntary. I mean, a lot of times we get bored, right? I mean, we master a job. It takes about 5 years of full-time work to master a task or a group of tasks of a job. And a lot of people aren't, once they've mastered it, a lot of the challenge is gone, and a lot of the energy leaves because they're not learning and growing and becoming more expert. And so, that can cause people to choose to redirect their energies to a different career, a different way to work and earn money, or it could be involuntary. I mean, you've already kind of experienced that, and the audio engineering world has basically been disintermediated by technology.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of that work has been disintermediated by technology, and so they're not. Jobs aren't as plentiful. Jobs aren't as well compensated because there's an oversupply of qualified audio engineers out there competing for each job. And so sometimes you have to redirect your career just because, you're not going to be able to sustain yourself, or at least the way you want to sustain yourself in your current career. So a lot of reasons you'd shift careers. And a lot of people, I think when last I heard, and I don't have any frame of reference for if this is accurate or not, but I heard that the average American would have 11 different careers during their working life of 45 years, give or take. And so that means about every 4 or 5 years, you're changing a significant, you're changing your work in a pretty significant way, which, would track with the 10,000 hours to become an expert in something too. So, so this is something that, I mean, it's a big deal because it happens a lot. It's a big deal because it's probably going to happen to all of us. And it's a big deal because it can be pretty disruptive, and minimally, it's going to take a lot of time. Anytime you do something new or do something for the first time, it's going to take a disproportionate amount of energy and focus to do it. So we often end up, when we do have these transitions and these changes to the way we work, they can demand a lot from us in that time period as we become comfortable in the new role. So
when I was talking to my classmates, because I had decided to leave music before I graduated, but I was on a big scholarship and didn't have time to change majors. So just finished out the program I was in, thinking it'd be better just to have a bachelor's degree than to not. And I don't know how much that's come in handy for me, but
it won't matter. It will matter. It does change the way people look at you when you look.
It hasn't yet.
Well, but you've only been out of school 2 years. So
that is true. But I have this degree. And it's funny when I was talking to people about it, because I would talk to a lot of the people in my major and they'd be like, you just decided you don't want to do audio anymore? And I was like, yeah. And they were like, do you feel like you've wasted these 4 years? And it's funny because people felt so bad for me, but I was like, I've reached the conclusion that most of y'all are going to reach just first. There's over 200 of us in the graduating class and maybe 3 jobs in Nashville, maybe a total of 10 in the whole United States. We're all not getting, you guys are going to leave too. So it was kind of funny when people would be I'm so sorry. And I'd be like, it's gonna happen to you too, probably.
Yeah, I mean, that's right. Your grandfather's a geologist, and the same thing happens. There's, newly minted geologists every year come pouring out, but there aren't a lot of jobs in geology specific fields. But it isn't a waste to get an education. I mean, those 4 years weren't just about audio.
I mean, I wrote my thesis, which helped. I know a lot about internet protocol, about hooking up just systems, not necessarily audio systems. I've learned a lot about signal flow and electrical engineering. I have a lot of really practical skills now.
You do, and
I mean, it got me a home and a boyfriend. So,
well, and that was the other thing I was going to add is that it's not just about. I mean, you didn't take audio engineering classes. You took other classes, and you learned other things, and you you had life experiences during that time that you wouldn't have had you not gone to school and gone away to school.
Well, mini reunion too last night, which was kind of
Yeah,
fun.
well, so I mean, these are, it's never a waste. And you did learn. I mean, this is a field that intrigued you. I think you enjoyed learning about audio engineering and kind of the deep dive. But yeah, so it certainly wasn't wasted. But it does put you back a bit in the work world, looking for work, since you are extremely well trained for a career you don't want to follow. And so you have to build similarly deep skills, and it's going to take you a little while longer, and you'll probably have to do it on the job.
Mm-hmm.
Or you're going to have to do it outside the job, which requires.
Well, the hardest part I found is not even building the skills on the job, because that's very doable for me. The hardest part is convincing hiring managers to take a chance on you, because you can't just be like, hey, trust me, wink, wink, on your cover letter. Or on your resume, but there's so many times that I wish I could, because I'm applying for a job and I'm like, listen, these job duties, I could do them in my sleep. It doesn't look like I can, but I swear to God I can. So it's like getting to the interview phase is usually when I'm gonna like excel, because then I can convince them to like, hey, just trust me on this. Yeah. But getting past like when I've gone through changing my job or career, the 2 times now, it has been really hard to get interviews, because I don't look like I can do data admin, since I've only done food service and vet industry stuff. Yeah. And I'm like, listen, everyone can do data admin.
Well, yeah, and you're right. You have the mind for it. You don't have the experiences. And remember that hiring managers, or not even the hiring managers, but I mean, let's talk about the people who are doing the screening, which are really HR people, recruiters, and HR generalists or specialists who are around recruiting. They're inundated with resumes, and initially they're just trying to eliminate candidates so they can get down to a manageable number. And so it's
an easy one to eliminate.
If you don't have the experience, you're going to throw out some of the baby with the bathwater, but you're trying to minimize. The other thing is you're trying to minimize mistakes. In recruiting, so much of it is, there's a lot of things that you can't control for. People interview well and then don't follow, then aren't really, they're all hat, no cattle kind of, to borrow a Texas phrase. You're all hats and no cattle, to borrow a Texas phrase, but you look like a cowboy, but you've never really done the cowboy work. All
right, I'm showing up to all my interviews in a bolo tie. It's happening.
Yeah. All hat, no cattle is just a way to describe somebody who puts on a good show, who puts on a good front, but there's really nothing behind it. And these guys, if you've been in hiring at all, you've run into folks like that, and it's risk, right? I mean, I think we've talked about in the past that fear is 2.5 times more powerful than hope, and the fear of making a bad hire is 2.5 times stronger than the hope of making a good hire. And so especially recruiters who don't have in-depth knowledge about each job and aren't able to talk extensively to really test your knowledge or your skill set, like a hiring manager does. It's getting in the door is hard if you don't have the background. And this is why a lot of people, this is why night school was invented, right? I mean, you had people who were like needed credentials because they wanted to do, they wanted to do things different than, they didn't want to be driving a truck or pushing a mop or, driving bolts, and they wanted to do something else, and they weren't getting the opportunity to interview for those types of jobs. And so they needed to learn skills, but they also needed to demonstrate to potential employers that, hey, you can trust me because I've been through this instruction. I have a certificate that says that I've got this knowledge. And that's, when you have a network of people who know you, when you have people who can vouch for you, mentors and sponsors, it gets a lot easier to get into those situations where you can actually interview. But you're right, when you're doing cold calling, it's very tough if you can't demonstrate the experience.
It is hard. It's real hard out there. I almost it's very annoying when I have to take like skill quizzes for jobs. Like, it's definitely like when I apply and I'm like, yay, and they don't tell me I have to take a skill quiz, and then I'm like, oh, I thought this was going to be 5 minutes, now it's going to be an hour. Okay, cool. But at the same time, I would so much rather take the skill quiz because
Yeah, it shows that
it shows that I can do the thing.
Right.
That
Exactly.
was the nice part. The temp agency I'm with right now had me take like an Excel proficiency and a Word proficiency quiz, so they can better pitch me, which is very helpful. And then also I have like my contact who knows me on a more deep, like a deeper level than just my resume. Like she knows a bit more about me, and also has my resume and also helped shape my resume. Like we've talked in depth about what I've done at my job. So she knows what my skills are. And that's really helpful to have on the inside. The problem is just temp jobs don't pay.
Well, not, I mean, they're used. Yeah, you're right. They don't. I mean, because typically they're not high risk jobs. I mean, actually there are, you'll find, I mean, there are temp CFO jobs, chief financial officer jobs, and they pay a lot, but you're not qualified for that. But I mean, right now, the jobs you're qualified for, usually don't require a ton of experience, and so a lot of people can do them, and that's why the wages are low, because you're competing. That's the way market works, right? So the labor market or any other market, when you've got an abundance of people who can do the job, you can get other people to do it more cheaply, and so
indeed, labor is not a commodity.
What's that?
It's too bad laborers aren't a commodity and like unfortunately need to survive and stuff.
Well, I mean, in some sense, economic sense, they are a commodity. They also have to be people.
That's what I draw an issue with. I don't like that economic interpretation of people. I find it very dehumanizing. I don't like it.
It is. It separates, what people do from who they are and all the other. I mean, it's very one-dimensional.
It's very productive.
You're taking three-dimensional people or four-dimensional people and only taking one aspect of it.
Well, and it also erases the fact that, like, if there's an abundance of work, if there's an abundance of workers, it's going to pay less, instead of thinking like, if there's an abundance of workers, that's a bunch of people who need housing, who need food, who need to pay their bills to survive. I don't think that should be a market, but that's a different subject.
Yeah, it is. But this is, I mean, when we're talking about job and work and.
So the big deal for me about changing my job or career is honestly that it's the frustration part of it that is really annoying. Is the work or die nature of it, and the fact that it's often portrayed as, oh, well, the possible employee comes in for an interview, and if they don't like what the manager's offering, then they can also walk away. When like that's really not the situation a lot of people are in. It's not the situation I'm in. And it's a massive oversimplification of what it actually is to be in the labor market. So that's the most stressful part, is a lot of hiring managers and a lot of the culture surrounding applying for jobs is like, we'll get back to you in 4 to 6 weeks. And it's like, well, I'm unemployed now. Like, I need a job now, but you can't exactly write in your cover letter, hey, trust me on this. Also, can you get back to me soon?
Well, and part of that is, how much is it the employer's obligation to manage, to help you manage your life. And this is really where we get into some of the things that we were just touching on a few minutes ago about, sort of what are social, I won't say obligations, but social responsibilities, social desires versus, the employees. I mean, for me, healthcare is the perfect example. There's very few companies out there. I mean, healthcare companies perhaps, but other than that, I worked for Charles Schwab for many years, right? Financial services companies, very knowledgeable about investing. We offered all kinds of investment products. We had people to help. We had all kinds of resources to help people invest. And yet we also had to have experts in our company in administering healthcare plans. I mean, that's not really a great fit for an investment company or a manufacturer or a software company. I mean,
and the idea of your health insurance being tied to your employment is so flimsy too. Like, it's just, it's not a good way to build a healthcare system.
No, but I mean, the reason it exists like this is because employers realized that was one way that, well, one, you could attract people because you give them healthcare, because it isn't publicly provided, it has to be privately provided. And so if I can, as an employer, offer you as an employee healthcare coverage, then that makes me more attractive and you more likely to work for me. It also ties you to me, and it connects you, and is a consideration for you leaving is, okay, well, what about my healthcare? It's a benefit. But the issue with that is that, as from a company standpoint, Charles Schwab would be much better outsourcing healthcare coverage to somebody else. And as a society, we would be much better served if everybody was covered by healthcare instead of having.
And it wasn't tied to your jobs. I mean,
Well,
would just
that's what I mean.
so much easier to escape a toxic workplace on like the worker side of it. It's like,
well,
if
but
your ability to survive if you're sick or if you get in a car accident is tied to the shitty job you're working. Oh crap.
There's a dollar for me. Yep.
All right, should I do that now or at the end?
I mean, you're focusing on the crap, you're focusing on the lousy jobs, but it doesn't matter if you have a good job, it still shouldn't matter. Your healthcare shouldn't,
Sorry,
from a company standpoint. What's that?
What'd you say?
I said it doesn't matter whether it's a crappy job or not. It just as your job. It doesn't, it's inefficient. It doesn't make economic sense for employers to have to provide healthcare.
You didn't say it was BS now, did you?
I didn't.
Okay, I thought I heard it.
No, I did not.
I got excited. I was like,
Nope. It's all, $1 to the good today. So
I just transferred my Venmo balance too. It's $1 out of my bank account.
Yep, there you go. Well, I'll teach you. Maybe not. I don't know. But anyway, the point is that, when we're talking about, careers and jobs and things, the mismatch, I think, and between the a lot of the benefits don't really relate to the job you're doing, and it's kind of got the government and not the government, well, the government is us, right? Democracy, so our representatives are running things on our behalf, but
let's call it that.
But that's what it is.
Well, yeah, let's call it that.
That's what it is. I mean,
I'm gonna not agree with that, but
I mean, if you're voting, then you got your voice to be heard.
Yes and no. There's also the fact that like Montana has 4 times as much voting power as California does because they capped the California electoral representation because otherwise it would decide every election, which that's bad.
Because of the way the Senate's organized federally. I mean, that's
the House, not the Senate. That is why it was capped. But every state has to have California was capped on number of representatives in the House because otherwise they would be able to decide pretty much any election if it was actually representative of the population. So because of that, Californians have 1/4 of the voting power of Montanans, 1/3 of the voting power of Vermontians, et cetera, et cetera. So that's super not great. Also, gerrymandering.
These are corrupting. Well, the gerrymandering, the electoral piece is just, I mean, everybody needs elections, and if you don't have enough people in Wyoming to create one House district that you'd have in California, your people in Wyoming need to be represented. So they need to have.
I mean, I have the theory behind the House and the Senate is fine. Yeah, the practice of it, I'm no longer impressed with.
Well, fine. I mean, I think it was Winston Churchill says democracy is the worst form of government except for all the others. And that's.
Yeah, so I also don't like Winston Churchill. So,
but it's less about him and what he said, right? I mean, what he said is that it's not a perfect system. It's not a perfect system, but it's better than anything else we can create. So
I do think democracy is great. I don't think we live in a democracy. I don't think our system is democratic.
Well, I disagree, and it is. We get to vote. We get to vote, and it's not perfect by any means. And you're right, the gerrymandering, the voter suppression, those are corrupting influences. Those are corruptions, but that's in the implementation and in the practice of the principles and the structures that we put in place.
To be fair, the people who designed the country also thought that a significant portion of the population was 3/5 of human beings. So maybe it was never designed to be super representative.
No, but it was, and we fixed that through the years, right? And we also, landowners were not. Well,
also debatable.
But women are voting now. Minorities are voting now. Well, yeah, that's important. That's important. Again, not perfect.
It's important. We've made progress.
A lot of progress.
We've not made as much progress as a lot of people in government would like us to believe. And I kind of am of the mind that, I don't know, maybe the document written by people who owned human beings as property isn't the document we need to follow forever.
But not all of them owned human beings as property. Some of them did, because that was the culture.
All the founding fathers had slaves. Yeah, they did. You can look it up.
The people in Vermont had slaves. The people.
All the founding fathers had slaves. The people who wrote the Constitution all had slaves.
No, but they were from, well, the ones who were from Virginia. I mean, Madison was from Virginia, so yes, he did. But
no, they all did.
John Adams had slaves?
Yes.
Okay, I'll have to look that up, because I don't believe that's true.
They all did.
We'll see. I'll
Some of them freed
and,
them after they died, but no, they all owned little people.
Well, I will look that up, because I don't believe that's true.
All right, well, we could look it up now.
Well, we could, but that takes.
We could add that to our future research.
We'll put that in our research things. But
Cool.
Anyway, point I'm trying to make is that not perfect, but we have these principles in place, and as it relates to jobs and careers, there's reasons that you would change a job and a career, and reasons that you won't. And some of the things that some of the reasons you won't is because of things like healthcare, which don't really make a lot of sense. Again, why they're, I mean, it doesn't make sense from me from an employer standpoint. And certainly as an employee, I'd like portability and be able to, have less friction in my life leaving a job, because it is very time consuming.
Plus, like, healthcare tied to job does leave openings for Republican Congress people to be like, well, jobs shouldn't have to provide birth control if it's against their religion. And it's kind of like, my boss shouldn't be making my reproductive health decisions. And it just gives bosses an unnecessary amount of control over the health of their employees too.
Yeah, and I think that's a small issue. I don't think you've got companies, because you also have companies who are, I think it was Citigroup, who is guaranteeing their Texas employees access to birth control or access to abortion services if they have to fly them out of the state.
You've got both. You've got a mix of both. There's good ones, and there's ones like Hobby Lobby. But
again, those are specific employers with, and I think it's going to be pretty small. Most of the employers are going to cover most of the procedures that are in the thing. But again, you're dealing with, companies don't want to have to be dealing with this kind of stuff. It takes away from the mission of any organization when they have to deal with this kind of stuff, with these kind of decisions, and where they have to consider health plans and what coverages they need. I mean, it's a big drag on companies.
It's also a big thing for, like, because they have to cover the premiums of the employees too. Like, that doesn't just magically go away. So for once, I agree with Marsha Blackburn that companies should not be covering insurance, but then she goes to be like, therefore it should be private and everyone should be paying it. And I'm like, okay, well, no, but.
No, right, because I mean, and that's, these are the debates that we need to have. But
it makes it hard for small businesses to take on full-time employees because they can't afford to offer health insurance, but it's also really hard to have employees and not offer health insurance. So
since employees need everybody needs coverage.
Everybody needs
and the expectation is that it's coming through the job. And you're right. And so, you get these disruptions in your life as you change your jobs, as you change your career paths to follow things that you're interested in, or to get out of something that isn't working very well for you. And you'd have these other considerations that kind of come into play. It's, I don't know, these are things that that we'll all face in the course of our working lives. We'll make a lot of decisions, and these are major decisions. This is it is a pretty big deal when you have these. Our season 4 is all about life transitions, and your job transitions are a big part of your life. So we went down the wormhole of public health versus private health.
I mean, we usually go down a weird wormhole eventually.
Yes, exactly. So.
But I mean, it is a big deal. One of the biggest things about changing your job or career is losing health insurance. Mm-hmm. I have a lot of friends who have stayed at jobs because they're like, I haven't been able to afford to go to the dentist. I finally have good dental insurance. Mm-hmm. I'm going to wait 4 more months before I start applying to a job that I actually want to do, because I just need to go to the dentist. that is a really big part of changing jobs, is losing health insurance. Like I had another friend who finally found a therapist she liked, who was in network and everything. And then 2 weeks before she was supposed to move across the country and had an agreement to work remote with her boss, the CEO decided that nobody is allowed to work remote anymore. Everybody has to come into the office. And she was like, yeah, so I'm moving to Massachusetts. I can't come into the Nashville office every day. Can I work remote? CEO was like, no, you can't, you're done. And so she was kind of freaking out because she's like, well, I found this therapist that I see for $25 a visit and I finally like a therapist. Like, what am I supposed to do? Unfortunately, the therapist was awesome and was like, I will keep seeing you for $25 a visit. It's fine.
Yeah.
But it was definitely like a lot of my friends who have been going through career changes. One of the biggest things about changing your career, more so than like learning new skills, because usually if you are changing your career, it's because it's something you're interested in. It's now everything about my health insurance has to change. I've got to call all my doctors. I've got to figure out if they all still take it. That's hard. That's really tough.
Yeah, well, and that's your friends who are still childless, probably. Think
Yes.
about when you've got 2 or 3 kids, or especially if one of those kids
Even
has
worse.
got medical needs or special needs, that
Mhm.
you're gonna think long and hard about, gee, am I willing to kind of make this move for my professional development and my professional, my
Especially when it's a situation where it's like, the 90-day probation period, you don't get your health insurance till 90 days. It's like, well, man, I hope none of us gets hit with a car.
Well, most jobs will. I mean, one, you get COBRA coverage, right, and which you have to fund yourself. But the most companies, most large companies at least, will give you 30 days. Will bring you on healthcare within 30 days, or usually it's the first
Of the month following.
First of the month following when you join. You get your coverage. Now, things like 401k programs and their retirement programs and things are sometimes put out farther before you start participating. But I think healthcare is one of those. And not every company, of course, but
no, I've worked at a lot of places that there's 60 to 90-day period before you get any benefits at all, including sick days or PTO or anything. Just like no benefits, no employee discounts for 90 days.
Right. Well, remember that you are at an entry level, and there are many, many, many of you.
Well, to be fair, that was a vet tech job, which is not an entry level job.
Yeah, I thought vet tech was entry level for.
No, that would be like a receptionist job if you're working entry level. In the company I worked for was sketchy, so they hired us with no prior experience. But
I see. Well, to me, that's entry. If you're being hired into a job where you don't have experience, that's entry level, right?
I mean, yes, but you're also like a nurse, so.
No, I know that. I'm not saying it's not an unskilled job. I'm just saying that it doesn't require experience. They train you on the job.
Yeah.
That's still an entry level job. It's just, and there are many, many candidates for those jobs because
the animal industry is incredibly competitive.
You don't have specialized skills yet, but 10 years from now, when you're looking for jobs, you're going to be in a much smaller subset of people competing for those jobs, and the companies will be more generous to bring you on because they're going to want you to bring you on.
I mean, I can see it already with the jobs that Callie's able to apply to versus the jobs that I'm able to apply to. It's like she has really extensive, good professional experience, and I've only been working in like, not a food service environment, which I have some like classism feelings about. But I definitely I can't apply for like some of the jobs that she's going for and is able to make that like argument for, because like she has just more experience like showing up to an office than I do.
Well, and she's 3.5 years older than you are, so she's got.
Yeah, I mean, it gives me a little bit of hope that she's getting more attention at that point. I'm like, okay, even if my like resume is still kind of eclectic by the time I'm 27.
Yeah.
Can't believe she's 27. It's crazy.
Yeah, she's gonna be 28 this year.
I know, I'm gonna be 24 this year.
Yeah. Well, but this is the thing. Especially if you're being intentional, which is something that we always like to see.
I don't think we've ever said that before. Do you think being intentional has come up on this podcast?
Pretty sure it's come up, but
I'm not sure. I don't remember you saying that.
Yeah. Well, maybe I'll pay more attention, but you're building skills that will, and it's not just a single set of skills. It's going to be the combination of skills. Your communication skills are going to be important. Your work management skills are going to be important. Across a lot of different jobs, and then the specific, the industry specific skills, knowledge, experiences that you have will, in another 5 years, you're right, you will look a lot different than to employers than you look today.
I mean, I also, because I didn't really have experience writing resumes for professional jobs too, because I've only made resumes for like internships and food service, not even entry level, but just like straight up part-time stuff. I didn't really, like my resume for animal stuff was a lot more like, hey guys, please. And it turns out they were just as desperate. So that worked out for me. But talking with the recruiter, the temp agency I'm at, helped me put a spin on kind of my past experience, but also made me realize, like, in my past experience, I have a lot more professional experience than I've given myself credit for. And where I've been like, oh, it was just an internship. Oh, I was just working at Sunflower Cafe. Where instead, when you can be like managed teammates during blah, 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 or sorted the mail, is like, okay, I have done admin stuff. Like, it's not, the whole office culture is not brand new to me. I know how to be professional. I know how to do these things that they're going to ask me to do.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you've built a set of experiences and developed skills that are relevant, and it's mining your experience, mining your, what you've actually done, and calling out what's relevant to the new jobs. And, interacting with clients, interacting with customers is one of those things in retail that I think a lot of people overlook. That's what
I've started putting down, like, I have 7 years of customer service experience, because that is customer service, and I did it for 7 years.
Yeah, it's heavily customer service. I mean, you're interacting, you're solving problems. That's the other thing, is right. When you're on the line in Sunflower Cafe, you're solving problems. People need something different, or gee, we're running out of this ingredient out here. What can we, how do we solve that? Somebody didn't show up. How do we cover that? That problem solving is something that transcends food service, right? I mean, every job is going to have things that unexpectedly come up, and how do you handle those?
I am shocked every time I start a new job how similar all of my jobs are. I'm like, oh, it's just work.
A lot of it is in a broad sense, right? I mean, it's talking to people, communicating things, it's solving problems, it's producing. Right?
Especially soft skills like multitasking and communication are like, that's just universal. You're always going to need to be able to multitask. You're always going to need to keep track of various things that are going on. You're always going to need to be able to communicate effectively. Like, there's no job where effective written and verbal communication isn't important.
Right.
So that's definitely been like, it's not the changing, all this to get back to what's the big deal about changing your job or career. In my experience, the big deal is not changing the job or changing the career direction, because usually you're doing that out of interest. You want to do something else. But the hardest part is the applying and the healthcare and all of the little things that come in between, like figuring out when you're going to leave. And when you apply for a job and they ask, like, on the application, what's your start date? I'll put like 2 weeks out, and then they don't get back to me for 3 weeks. And they're like, so you can start immediately? And I'm like, no, I need to give 2 weeks notice.
Yeah, that's where you put 2 weeks after hire.
Well, they don't usually have like the ones that I've been doing digitally are usually just a calendar with no area for notes.
Right. Well, that's true. And they kind of get that. I mean, I'm sure you're not the only one who has to.
It's definitely not, but it's all the little things around changing your job that is hard. And Eric and I have talked about this recently too. Of just like, for thinking about what he wants to keep doing moving forward. Is like, the stressful part is not can he do the job, because he's smart, he's capable, he can definitely do a job, he knows how to manage himself. The hard part is like, will anyone hire him with his restaurant experience? Like, what's he gonna do about income in the time between? How does he fit interviews around his current schedule? Yeah, because I've had jobs that like try to schedule 2 interviews in the same day for me, and I'm like, I can't take 2 lunch breaks. Yeah.
Well, that's where you need to be able to go to your job, your current employer, and say, hey, I need the afternoon or whatever, right? I mean, those issues don't go away. I mean, when I was interviewing at Schwab and working full-time at Pacific Bell Directory, it was kind of like, I just I'd either take the afternoon or morning and tell my boss, hey, I'm taking paid time off here, I'm taking vacation time, half day or a full day, depending. and doing, and doing it. If you don't get paid time off for vacation, you take a personal day to do it. I mean, these are
I
things
think
that
it's just
everybody
like
has to
that's
do.
getting harder and harder to do, especially with my job, is like even on weeks, because I haven't worked there for a year yet, so I don't get paid holidays,
Right.
even though the office is closed on all holidays, and I literally cannot make money if I wanted to, which I do. Because of that, like on the weeks, on the pay periods where there's a holiday, I can't make my rent that month.
Yeah.
So when it's stuff like, oh, I have to take an afternoon off to go to a job interview, I'm like, I can't do that. I'm not going to make my rent. Like, help.
Well, yeah, but that's, I mean, that's the situation you're in, and you've got to manage that, right?
That is the big deal, though. It's to come back to the question is, what's the big deal about changing your job or career? It's the trying to figure out how to still continue to make money while you're in the transition, and how to take care of your health while you're in the transition.
Yeah, and I think those are specific, especially to the early career kind of transitions. Again, because there's just a lot of people competing for it, and you don't get the breaks.
And we're not, I mean, the minimum wage is not, it's not what it used to be. It's not what it was 40 years ago. In comparative, like twice minimum wage isn't what it was 40 years ago. Twice minimum wage is still under being able to make your living expenses. So it's really difficult out there. It's real brutal out here.
Right, but that's, yes, I mean, that's work right now, whether you're changing work or not changing work. It's stuff that people have to deal. But this is not new. I mean, have you ever read the book Nickel and Dime? You ought to.
That's been on my reading list for a while.
It's an interesting book, and it's it's pretty compelling, and it shows kind of the people who are economically marginalized, who don't get a lot of money, who have to work very hard for not very much, and it's a tough place to be.
Really interesting book that I read, it's like a pamphlet. There's 2 essays. It's called Abolish Restaurants. It's very interesting. Really enjoyed reading that.
I mean, and we're not going to solve those issues here today, but those are, but I think the things that you're describing, the challenges that you're describing, are specific to early career changes.
I mean, I can't speak to later career changes. I haven't been through that. I don't really know what it's like. I don't have any. Yeah, you can speak to it.
I can
speak to it right now.
Well, and I mean, a lot of the questions remain the same, right? I mean, it's kind of like, okay, is this a good move for me from a professional standpoint? Am I going to build skills and continue to grow in my career and grow in my responsibilities, which then also grow in my compensation? I mean, those are all kind of related, correlated. They're not one-to-one, but those are correlated. But then there's the question, is this good for my family or the other people that are affected and the other stakeholders in my life? Is this a job that's going to require my partner to step in, and probably will during the transition period at least, right? Because while I'm having to devote more mental cycles to learning the new job, learning my new coworkers, learning my new customers, learning my new markets, learning my new competitors, that's going to take time and energy away from, the rest of my life. And if I have a partner, it's going to affect their life too, because now they're going to have to, either stuff's going to get left undone, or I'm going to exhaust myself, or they're going to step in and share the burden, share the extra load there.
Part of why I'm very excited to move in with my partner. It's going to be a lot easier to manage those in between times with another person around. And vice versa too. Like I can pick up the slack when he needs it. Because right now, as it is, it's like if he's really going through something and his house or his room is dirty because of it, it's like I can't really help out too much because I also have to deal with my whole house on my own. But I'm excited to share our little home. So
that's partnership, right? I mean, but these are considerations when you're making a big significant change that's going to require energy, effort, time. It's going to affect more than just you. And so as you get older, I mean, that's the thing, when you're doing an early career change, you pretty much just need to focus on how is this going to affect me. When you do later career changes, when you have family, partners, community already, how is this going to affect them? Am I going to relocate? If I take this new job, I'm going to have to move away. What does that do to my local community that I'm a part of? What does it do to my partner? I mean, is this something we can manage? So there's a lot of those kind of considerations that come into play, in addition to the things like you talked about, the healthcare and the other benefits, or okay, what does that mean for me? What does that mean for the people around me, the people who depend on me? And so, I think the benefit of late career changes, though, is they tend to be managed better because they're not as common. I mean, when the kind of career changes that you're talking about and that you're experienced so far, a lot of people are having them, right? They're scrambling, trying to find, it's like musical chairs. Everybody's trying to find out the place that they're going to be. And so there's a lot of that movement. But when you get later in your career, the types of transitions you're doing will be fewer in number and therefore can be more customized so that you get negotiating power. Right now, it's tough to negotiate with somebody in your position.
It's really hard. It's not possible, honestly. I can't go into a job interview right now and be like, actually, you have to compensate my health insurance and pay me more. I won't work here. They'll be like, okay, bye.
Because somebody with your skills right now is more of a commodity and they can treat you like that. But when you get 20 years experience and you have much more to offer, they're going to be a lot more motivated.
I'm so excited to become a person in 20 years.
Well, it's not about being a person.
How lucky for me.
This is not, I mean, you're equating work and people and they're not.
No, I mean, being treated like a commodity versus being treated like a human being with skills and value.
Right, but the skills aren't relevant. The skills you have aren't relevant to the people aren't as relevant.
I mean, they are relevant, and that's what they're asking for. It's just the lack of negotiating power speaks to the fact that I am a commodity to most employers right now. And so the argument that like in 20 years I won't be, it's like, in 20 years I become a person. It's exciting.
It's not about a person. It's about having a set of skills that have economic value. And that's what we're talking about.
It's a joke.
It's you're equating work with a full person, and that you're never gonna. I mean, that's just not gonna. I mean, it won't happen.
I don't think work is what makes a person a person. I mean, my issue is the work environment, the work culture we have in this country treats people not as people. Which I don't like. I think
but you just said it. Why should a private employer who's just asking for a piece of a person have to treat the whole person? This is back to the healthcare question.
I mean, if they're asking for 40 hours a week from me,
but why
should be offering me a living wage?
You are. I mean, it's a two-way street. It's not. They're not exploiting.
I mean, I'm giving them 40 hour. I'm giving them full-time employment, like full-time work. I'm selling my labor to them. Like,
yes, you are.
I shouldn't have to work more than 40 hours just to make ends meet. That's exploitation. If you're going to take like someone and not treat them like a full person and treat it like it's not your responsibility to give them a living wage, but you're going to still make your business runs off of their labor, you're exploiting them.
I agree to a point, but I think the expectation that the employers need to solve all of our problems is misplaced.
That's not what I'm saying. I'm not saying
it sounds like it. I mean,
it's not.
No.
I'm saying if they're going to financially compensate me for most of my time during a week, then that financial compensation should be sufficient to pay my bills and keep me alive. I'm not asking them to meet all my needs. I can take care of the rest, but they're going to need, like, I shouldn't be making under the living wage, and nobody should be making under a living wage for full-time work.
That becomes a public policy issue in my view, because the company that pays you a living wage is not going to be able to compete in an industry where other people are not paying a living wage and people are willing to work for that. And
that's a bad system is where I come. That's the conclusion I get from it.
It's not a bad system. It's bad oversight. That's a public policy question of what's a minimally acceptable standard of living. And we need to set minimum wages and things like that. Asking a company to take that on, I think, is misguided. I think.
The thing is that I don't want individual companies to be the ones who are responsible to that. I do think the solution is public policy. I agree with you on that.
Right.
I think companies taking advantage of public policy to not pay their employees like that, and then to turn around and lobby the government to make sure that that never becomes public policy, is a bad system. That is a result of the system that we've set up. That is a result of capitalism.
Disagree that it's a system problem. I think it's the system is the bucket. It's what you're putting into the bucket. The fact that you have corrupting influences and they're given voice and able to carry.
But what are they corrupted by?
Well, they're corrupted by power, and they're corrupted by
How did they get that
personal
power?
gain. Well, because they were, they were wealthy, they were smart, they were educated, they were,
And how did they get wealthy and smart and educated?
Usually because their parents were, or because they were smart, or you're born smart, and you get people. I'm sorry.
So then how did their parents get there? It's because
Well,
it's built off of exploitation. It's a system of exploitation that's existed for as long as capitalism has existed, since before then.
It's not just a capitalism problem.
I mean, I'm not saying human greed is not a
it's
capitalism problem
it's a
exclusively,
human
no,
problem.
but capitalism is very easily corrupted by it, and capitalism rewards corruption, which is what my issue with capitalism is. I don't.
Corruption and capitalism affects every economic system that's out there.
I agree with you. It does.
Which is because it's a human issue, not a system issue.
You're right. It does affect. Corruption is present no matter what system you're in. But my problem with capitalism is that it rewards that corruption.
I disagree. I don't think it rewards it any more than communism, socialism, oligarchy. Oligarchy is a political system.
I was going to say, I mean, yeah, that's.
It's a human nature is people are going to use the power they have to advantage themselves. And it doesn't matter what system there is. It's the economic system is.
I agree, but I think, I mean, we're not going to solve this question here, but my final thought on it, as far as I want to go today, because I'm tired and my leg hurts, is that capitalism rewards that corruption. And we haven't tried anything else. So we don't really know what else works.
Well, as a world, we have tried everything. We have tried a lot of other things. Yes, we have. As a world,
not as a world, no. As countries in a world, as nations with borders who are competing with other capitalist countries, they've tried things, but you can't try communism while capitalism exists. That doesn't work. Capitalism is always going to win because it's a system built on exploitation. And if there's a country that's operating in good faith and a country that's operating in exploitation, they're not communicating on the same level in terms of trade. And you've got all the American embargoes and the wars and the threats and the mysterious deaths of people and then replaced by dictators. It's not good.
Those are not uniquely capitalist. You can look at the communist governments that we've had around the world have got the exact same.
That's my argument, though, is that we haven't tried communism as a global world.
Well, no, we haven't
tried anything. And also, the communist Russia was fascist. It wasn't communist.
Right. China. I mean, we've had a lot of different stabs at this. But this is, I think, what you're proving to me is this is human nature, that the corruption of this, they put in systems and then people corrupt them. And that's not a capitalist.
I do agree.
It's not a communism thing.
I do agree that people do corrupt systems, and we're going in circles here, which is why I want to end it. I agree that people corrupt systems. I think that capitalism doesn't have the fail safes that other systems have, that if we were to try it on a global level, we would see much more successful results under something more akin to communism than to capitalism on a global level.
I think
I know you disagree with that, but
I just don't see where that's even possible. But anyway, we can leave it here because
we're going in circles.
Late. And, well, we're not going in circles. We're debating these questions, but the assumption base is different between us, and so because of that, we won't come to any kind of we won't agree because of that. But the always interesting anyway to discuss. But I would like to ask you one question to think about, and and that is the moral. What is our individual moral obligation as it relates to work? Are we obligated to work? Because your man Marx, or maybe it was Engels, I don't remember, one of them coined the phrase, to each according to his ability, from each, you give according to your ability, you take according to your need. Mm-hmm. We often spend a lot of time about what we get from an economic system, but we don't really ever talk about what we owe to an economic system.
That's so Kierkegaard, actually, what we owe to each other.
Well,
not just economics, but also on a moral theory. But I don't really buy into the separation between political, social, and economic theory. I think that they're all inextricably linked.
I think they're definitely linked, and they do. I mean, human nature is the common thread among them. Mm-hmm. But,
my question for you to ponder is to look into anti-work reading and try to find the essay "Abolish Restaurants."
I will look for "Abolish Restaurants." I will.
Let me know what you think about it.
And I will do that.
I thought it was very interesting.
Very good. All right. What do we know what we're talking about next week?
We do. Our topic. Well, we didn't do the Venmo tally yet. Hold on.
Yes.
I got Venmo you. I should have just let it slide. Why did I remind you? I could have gotten away with it.
You might have been able to get away with it for a little while, but it would have come back.
Would have gotten away with it if it weren't for you meddling kids.
Yes, indeed.
Top people.
Yes.
Crap.
I wonder if we have to acknowledge in our that this is adult content because you swore. I think we can probably skate that. Our 9 listeners won't.
Yeah, I think they'll forgive us. All right, let me put that on the right card. There we go.
Sweet.
You get it?
Yep. It just buzzed. Thank you.
All right, and we got to research the founding fathers, and you've got to read Abolish Restaurants, and I've got to think about what we owe in terms of work.
What's your moral? Do you have a moral obligation? And if you do, what is it when it comes to working?
My short answer so far is yes, but the rest of that is more complicated, and we're wrapping up.
Right. Well, very good. So what are we talking about next week then?
Our topic for next week is one that I'm very well versed in, which is what's the big deal about chronic illness, aka my daily life.
Yeah, that's unfortunate as a young person that you're dealing with all that stuff, because most of the time chronic illness comes late in life as the body starts to fail. But your body started to fail way ahead of time. So
sure did. Thank you, COVID, and all the other things.
Doesn't mean that it can't be that you can't rally and fix it, but
nobody's gotten the answers on that so far. So
true, but that doesn't mean the answers don't exist. So we just have to keep looking. Very good.
All right. Well, in the meantime, you can find us on awkwardfamilyconversations.com, on Twitter at awkwardfamilyc1, on YouTube, also at Awkward Family Conversations, to see our beautiful faces. No cats today because Eric is here, so they're more focused on him than they are on me. Sad face. You can find us on Facebook at Awkward Family Conversations for any articles that we post. We should post the link to Abolish Restaurants if you do find it.
We'll start doing that, yeah.
Yep. And you can listen to us on Stitcher, Spotify, Apple, and Google Podcasts, wherever you like to listen. The recorded one comes out about a week after the video, though, so they have to go 3 weeks without us. Sorry, guys. Let us know what you think. Keep the questions and suggestions coming. I say keep that coming. Don't know if we've got
start them. Bring
somebody, please ask us a question. And we'll be back next week. I love you, Dad.
I love you too, Ed. Take care.